Hoping you've had a fantastic week. Welcome to another tantalizing episode of Metropole Sports Center. My name is Nashon Owano. Now it's time for us to look at some of the sporting stories that have been making headlines in the world. Now, ahead on the topic today, some of the things that you're going to be looking at in the show today is the Harambee Stars match. The game between Harambee Stars and Zambian side Chipolopolo. I'll be joined in the show later on with our resident analyst, that is John Makali, who also hosts the Swahili segment, the Swahili episode, or Swahili part of the show, that is Kapula Sport, to be making sense of some of the selections that were made in the show. Apart from that, some of the stories that are making headlines in the sports world is the NBA playoffs are almost coming to an end. So which team is going to be taking it home this year on the NBA finals? Is it going to be the Miami Heat, or is it going to be the LA Lakers? Another important thing that you could notice from the NBA finals for this year is that the defending champions, that is Toronto Raptors, that is led by Masai Ujiri, who clinched the title last year, are definitely missing out in this year's edition. Something that we usually talk about in the show is the Champions Curse, where you find that if a team probably wins a tournament the previous year, the following year they usually find very hard to maintain the same winning streak. I think this is something that we've probably seen in the World Cup, we've seen it in the English Premier League this season, and we also saw it in the NBA season. Now let's switch gears to matters locally, where the topic of conversation this week was the selection that was made by Francis Kimanzi for the team that was going to be facing the Harambee Stars team that was going to be facing it off with the Zambian side Chipolopolo. It is important to mention that the last time that these two teams actually pitted themselves or faced off was in 2015, where Zambia won 2-1. Now, the following are some of the players that were selected into the game that was played today. The following players, that is Arnold Origi, had been suggested or had been shortlisted in the provisional squad that was going to be joining the team. You remember that Arnold Origi plays internationally and is a goalkeeper. Part of the talking points about the selection or the naming of Arnold Origi into the squad is because he had been conspicuously missing in some of the Harambee Stars lineup or games that have been announced previously by the respective coaches. Another person who was mentioned in the provisional squad but eventually managed to be named in the final squad was Ian Otieno, who plays for Zesco United. Apart from that is Clark Odwor. It's important for us to understand who Clark Odwor. Clark Odwor is a defender who plays in England for Barnsley. Now, apart from that, Ayub Timbe, who plays for Beijing Rene in China, was also named in the provincial squad. Anthony Akumu, who played for the Kaiser Chiefs in South Africa, and then Johanna Omolo, who plays for Bruges in Belgium, and also Brian Musa, who plays for Wazito in Kenya, and also Michael Olunga, who is really flying high at the Kashiwa Reysol in Japan. Also named in the league was Elvis Rupia and John Avire, who plays for Tanta FC in Egypt. Those are just some of the players that were named in the provisional squad. Now, eventually, when Coach Francis Kimanzi was putting the whole team together, remember the team did their final training yesterday, that is on Thursday, just before they faced off with Zambian side. We could realize that Arnold Origi was not in the final squad that faced off with Zambia. This because of you remember the COVID-19 situation in the world, which has brought about the aspect of different countries setting up measures to ensure or to control the spread of the virus. Now, notable people that missed out in the final lineup was Arnold Origi, Victor Wanyama, who's the captain of the Harambee Stars. Apart from that, we had Johanna Omolo, who also missed out in the final lineup. Just to understand some of the players that were named in the final squad that faced it off with Zambia today was Ian Otieno, who I've already mentioned, plays for Zesco United. Timothy Otieno, who plays for Ulinzi Stars. It's important to know that these are the goalkeepers that were selected for this particular match. Also, part of that, there was Clark Odwor, who plays for Barnsley, and then there was Joash Onyango, who plays for Simba, I beg your in Tanzania. And then there's David Owino, all the way from, who plays for Mathare United, also part of that. There's Philemon from Gor Mahia and Badi Baraka from KCB Kenya. I think the approach that Francis Kimanzi actually chose to go with in this particular game was the challenge, as I've mentioned, was whether teams were going to be releasing the respective players to travel because of the COVID-19 regulations. But eventually Francis Kimanzi opted to go for the locally based players who actually showed up for this particular match. Some of the midfielders who showed up in this particular match was Kenneth Muguna, who plays for Gor Mahia, then Francis Kahata, who plays for Simba all the way in Tanzania, then Cliff Nyakoye, who plays in Egypt, and then Anthony Okumu, as I've mentioned, and then Hassan Abdallah. Just before the game was actually played, this is what Francis Kimanzi had to say about the team.
Mechi ya kirafiki waga kila wakati kwa mechi za kitaifa ni mechi ngumu, kwa sababu ni mechi ambayo pia una wachezaji wengi wageni, na wengi wakati mwingi wanataka kidogo kujituma zaidi, wanataka kuwania nafasi kwenye ile timu ambayo itaitwa wakati ule wa Comoros. Wana mambo mengi sana kwenye akili yao. Saa zingine huwa inafanyika, saa nyingine wani pressure kwao na mambo ile mechi kawa ngumu. But ni mechi tunaiangalia kama zile mechi zingine, sababu ni mechi ambayo inaweza tupatia itatuachia a lot of homework to think about. Tumejaribu kuongea nao, tumewazungumzia kwa kina, tuone kidogo kama wanaweza kutupatia that depth. Na hiyo depth ni performance. Ulunga, Wanyama, Yohana Omolo, wote kesi na Ayub Timbe, na dakika ya mwisho pia Okumu. Pia imekuwa ni the same challenge tulikuwa nao, but tukasema ni mzuri pia wakati hawapo, pia wengine tuwape nafasi. Wala tumekuwa kila time tukitaka tunataka kuwaona, but unajua wale wakija pia unaanza kuunda timu mara hiyo, but wakati hawako pia unawapatia wengine nafasi waone. Na kidogo tukija hiyo mwezi ujao tukisema tunaita mchezaji, tunajua si kwa majaribio, lakini tunajua uwezo wake, maana yake tumemwona hii mechi ya Zambia. So wakati tuko na wale vijana ambao tunafeel ni wazoefu wamekuwa pale, pia kidogo tunaanza kuwakaribisha hao wadogo wageni, na wakiwa kwa umri mdogo ndio tuanze kidogo kuintroduce. Ndio kwa hiyo transition tusifike mahali tuwe na ugumu zaidi. Tutaweza kuwa na ugumu zaidi. Kwa hivyo Clark anacheza English first division, nafikiria it's good enough kulingana na vile tumemwona akiperform. Pia tuanze kumintroduce pole pole.
I know the sentiment of some of the fans, the football fans in the country, was they are a bit disappointed by the fact that Victor Wanyama was not going to show up for that particular match. But as you can hear from that clip, is Francis Kimanzi decided to take it as a blessing in disguise. The lack of international players or experienced players in this particular lineup meant that he had more options to experiment with the players that he had within his reach. Now, also a very topical conversation that has been with regards to all this game was the whole COVID-19 regulations and restrictions. I remember just in the course of the week there was a bit of confusion on whether fans were going to be allowed into the game, but Nick Mwendo, who's the FKF president, had this to say about the COVID-19 regulations.
Sawa kabisa, tumewapima hawa wachezaji, tumewaeka na social distancing, tunawaeka peke yao. Tumefanya vilivyo kuhakikisha kwamba mambo ya COVID-19 protocol tumeyashughulikia, kwa sababu hii mechi ndio maana unaona tuna fans kwa kiwanja. Mechi kubwa ni pale Comoros, naona Comoros tunaweza fungulia maybe mafans watakuwa 2000, ndio tukapatia timu yetu motisha kidogo, tuvuke tuingie Comoros, tutafute point 4, tukipata hiyo tuchangamke tena na Cup of Nations. Tunahitaji matokeo katika mechi ya Comoros. Hamna njia nyingine. Angalau point 4 tupate katika mechi za Comoros. Tukipata 4 basi Togo na Egypt wanakuja Kenya, tunakwenda Togo, tunaweza kufanya kitu. Kwangu ni clear kwamba tunahitaji point 4 dhidi ya Comoros. Ndio tujue kwamba hizo pointi zikiwa 5 tuko namba 1 ama 2, basi tungoje tuone itakuwa vipi.
As we probably wrap up the first segment of this show, I would like to probably understand, were you impressed by the performance of Harambee Stars in Zambia today? I'll be joined by John McCulley after the break to probably make sense of the whole situation. But just before we finish, it will be important to hear what Clark Odwor, who's the defender who plays for Barnsley, had to say about his selection to play for Harambee Stars.
Yeah, it was good. Say it was my first session. That was quite intense. You know, it's a bit different. Like when you get on the ball, you don't really have much time. Everyone's just closing you down. And for me, it's like a massive achievement almost. Like I know I haven't played yet, but just to be called up, it was a massive achievement. And
well, that wraps up the first segment of the show. We take a short commercial break. After the break, we are going to be discussing, I beg your pardon, about the lineup that was selected by Francis Kimanzi and whether you were happy with the performance of the team. See you after the break.